Hello, losers! In today's video, I'm going to be talking about Star Trek, the original series, and what are my thoughts on the original series. Now, I am planning to make a spoiler video, hence the name of the title of the video, since it is super old. It's kind of nicer to make a spoiler. But if it's newer, I will probably make spoilers for it too, and you might go, well, why would you do that? Why would you make content making for spoiler movies? Because, look, there are a lot of people who would prefer watching content or videos or TV shows or documentaries talking about TV shows or movies or documentaries or whatever than actually watching them, because it gives a sort of review. Like, people like to react or watch reviews. Like, they like to watch, kind of like watching highlights, you know? Like, if you ever looked at a important event or a sporting thing, you know, even if you're not into sports, they have highlights, you know, that highlights the moments that they think should be highlighted, or just like whenever, like, whoever was in this, or whoever scored, or whoever won, you know, or just each, like, from the beginning of the game to the ending of the game, whichever part of the game seems like most important. That's pretty much it. And yeah, that was all that there is. Here's my review for the original franchise, and I am finishing Next Generation, so I'll give my review on that later, but for now, I have finished the original series. Now, I'm going to talk about this from a 2025 perspective, specifically from a 18-year-old Gen Zer, which is me. Well, from America, obviously. Well, basically, this version of Star Trek is from the 60s, specifically the late 60s. And this is around the time when Star Trek was very new and experimental, and it was mostly just made because of the way the 60s were at the time. And so because of it, they made it as a sort of DEI thing of their time, but it's not like modern DEI, you know. It would have been considered the DEI of its time if DEI was a common saying back then, because, you know, internet and everything. But back then it truly was the woke show of the time, at least that's what they say. But back then that was more of like a niche thing, that was more of the counterculture thing, and it was more of the, like, what you would do for, you know, making a cool original show at the time, which makes it very 1960s, if you know what I mean. And they say a lot of things and do a lot of things. I remember this one specific episode where I don't know if he was like turned into an alien or something like that, but he melted chess pieces. He slapped at a lady's butt, things like that. And then there was also an episode of where it was like the North Americans. Some people like to say Native Americans, but that's just a little too much to call them native. But I would prefer a North American because, well, they're from North America. They're in North America, so it's a little more less vague. It's more, you know, obvious. Well, anyway, he was like viewed as some god in an episode, and in that episode, he was like some god dang tribal god, and then they're like, oh no, he's a false god, and then they just kind of let him go. And then there was another episode staying on topic to that where it's like the United States, but instead of being like this European style, it was like it was like if the North Americans were the dominant culture, like those kind of people, like the the North American continental people or whatever you want to call them. Uh, they're like if they were the dominant people or something like that. You know, that kind of thing. Those kind of cultures were the dominant ones or something. And so because of it, the Americans became like some sort of, it was on like a different planet, but it's like that, but the whole planet, you know, that kind of thing, because it was the 1960s and that kind of concept was very new and experimental at that time because, well, that concept wasn't explored yet. They were just now exploring with it at the time. But then the thing about the Star Trek, the original series, it was a remastered, so I got to see it in a slightly better lighting and a slightly better tone compared to the actual original. You know. Well, anyway, like it was more like high quality looking. That was basically it. Um, in the original series, they didn't go back to Earth or something. Like what I mean is they didn't. Last episode they didn't do that. And I also noticed something about how the what do you call them? The rough people, the the people with the funny head looking things. There are a lot of those in Star Trek where they have like a funny looking head. But what was the name? I can't remember. I can't seem to remember. Um, they had a funny language. They talked funny. Well, in that version, before they were all dark and funny looking, they were basically just humans, but with a funny tan, and they had silly little beards. You know, that's basically. Oh, Cleon. Cleon was the kind of folks I was thinking of. And they didn't really have a Data character back then because I don't know if that was like a concept, but I think it was like something they developed in the 70s, but because things like that were not common quite yet, it just wasn't really a thing. Like it probably was in a couple of episodes because I don't remember exactly, but yeah, I didn't see any characters like Data or anything like that. That happens after. Oh, and it's so old, this was like, you know how like in Star Trek, they have like those teleporting food things, where it's like it can teleport you, like it can generate you any food or any drink or anything like that. Yeah, that doesn't really exist in the original. You have to like donate a card of whatever you wanted, and then you can get whatever you wanted. That's how it worked. Whereas in the Next Generation, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, uh, Star Trek, something else, they all just generate like that, which shows you that the more the technology improves, the more the show improves. You know, those kind of things. But now it's like the shows that they make now are more like movies, but we'll get onto that topic another day. But yeah, it was a 3-season show. And that when that show ended, it didn't truly end. It just kind of ended with that episode, you know. But to be fair, they did have a cartoon series afterwards, but there was just a time where I think it was just completely made by reruns, and then the reruns got so popular they just decided to make another series off of it or something. I heard they were making like mini series, but because they weren't like as mainstream as other things, they just keep going. And then eventually, because of its popularity and the audience relying on the reruns and things like that, They eventually rebooted the stuff from the 60s and put it into the late 80s, which is when uh, Next Generation. I say Next Generation is their most successful series, in my opinion. That series is what went from Star Trek from being like the most mainstream, one of the most mainstream series or shows from nerds to just a part of pop culture in general because of it. And then there was also Deep Space Nine. But the thing about Deep Space Nine, if you ever watched it, you would know unless you have the context of another show. You're probably going to be confused, but like I said, I'm probably going to talk about that for another day. All I gotta say is if you have the patience and you want to watch something that's very, very 1960s, well, there's the original Star Trek series for you. And yeah, have a nice day. And just remember, stay ugly.